Hello, welcome to a new edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the left wing populist. No, I'm just kidding. I'm the right wing populist, the right wing populist. But on today's show, I want to talk about a recent article that went viral over Blue Sky. For those who don't know, Blue Sky is like the left's version of Twitter now. After the past election, all the lefties were butthurt. All the libtards were so upset that Trump won that they all left X and they created this new platform called Blue Sky. And that's where all the libtards now, that's where they post all their stupid memes and shit. It's called Blue Sky. The sky that is blue, Blue Sky. And there's this article that went viral having to do with the 2024 election. And the article basically suggests that maybe the 2024 election was rigged and that Kamala really won the election. I kid you not, this has gone viral. And I wanted to discuss this topic because something that the media has not been talking about is there is, not a huge segment of the left, but there is a sizable percentage of liberals and Democrats who believe the 2024 election was rigged and that Trump didn't really win. It's actually very popular. Just go on Reddit. There's a big subreddit that's, I think, close to 100,000 subs called Something is Wrong 2024. And this whole subreddit is dedicated to the conspiracy theory that Trump didn't really win and the 2024 election was stolen. Now, there's many different theories about how it was stolen. A popular one on the subreddit is that Elon rigged the votes using Starlink, I guess, and he rigged the votes in Pennsylvania. And, and they think when Elon says, Trump would have lost without him, what he really means is that Trump would have lost without Elon rigging the vote. I mean, I kid you not, that's a very popular theory right now. Other theories you'll see in left-wing circles is that voter suppression, and that, this guy named Greg Palast, he's been going around a lot of left-wing YouTube channels saying that it hadn't been for voter suppression or signature matches, if they weren't enforced, Harris would have really won the election with over 280 electoral votes. That's a very popular theory. And there are others, just that the machines were rigged or not proper. But in this article that the last 2 days has been very popular, there's a specific claim having to do with voter machines, and I'm going to read you some of the article just so we know what the libtards are talking about on Blue Sky. So this article comes from the Economic Times, not a small website, not like some totally obscure website. And the headline is, Kamala Harris won the U.S. elections. Bombshell report claims voting machines were tampered with before 2024. And the synopsis of the article is, Kamala Harris election tampering story raises new questions about the 2024 U.S. presidential election outcome. A quiet but major change in voting machines by Pro-V&V, used in over 40% of U.S. counties, were never publicly reviewed or disclosed. Watchdog group Smart Election flags suspicious updates, missing votes, and statistical anomalies, suggesting potential vote tampering. Now, a lawsuit is moving forward challenging whether Kamala Harris may have actually won. So, that's the synopsis of the article. And I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but I want to get to the main, I want to discuss the lawsuit, what the lawsuit is about. So, in Rockland County, New York, several voters testified under oath that their ballots didn't match the official results. Senate candidate Diane Sayer reportedly lost votes in precinct after precinct. In multiple Democratic-leaning areas, Kamala Harris's name was reportedly missing from the top of the ballot entirely. Voters said they couldn't even find her name to select. The same areas had high support for Democrats like Senator Christian Gillibrand, yet Harris received 0 votes, a statistical anomaly that defies traditional voting patterns. Even more shocking, Donald Trump received 750,000 more votes than Republican Senate candidates in these districts. As reported by Distant in Bloom, a political substack, that's not split ticket voting, that's a mathematical anomaly. So essentially, this lawsuit that's taking place in what's it called? That's taking place in I think Rockland, New York. It's essentially they're making claims that because Trump got more votes than some of the Senate candidates, not just in New York, they're making the claim nationwide, but the lawsuit specifically in New York. They're making claims that because Trump received more votes than Republican Senate candidates in places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, that's a sign of the presidential results being tampered with. Because historically, we don't see split ticket voting the way that did take place in this past election. Trump got many more votes than Republican Senate candidates in many swing states like Nevada, like Arizona, like the 3 Rust Belt states. And this lawsuit is basically alleging that that's very unlikely statistical anomaly, and that's evidence that the presidential results were tampered with, and the main suspect is that the voting machines were rigged. That's what this lawsuit has to do. Again, that's specific to New York. Now, the article does go on to say this obviously is not going to change the outcome, even if the lawsuit was successful. It's not going to change the outcome, obviously, because Trump's already been inaugurated. Congress certified the vote. So, it's not going to change the outcome of anything. But I just want to debunk some of these claims just very quickly. Number one, while it is true that split ticket voting is not nearly as common now as it was, let's say, 30, 40 years ago, the reality is, based off the demographics, it makes sense that we saw a lot more split ticket voting in this past election cycle. Number one, we saw in polling for over the last year that Trump was polling better than many Republican Senate candidates. So it's not like this was out of the blue that Trump did better. In fact, the polling suggested that the amount of split ticket voters could have been even more than it actually was. And especially when Biden was still in the race, there were polls that would have Trump up, you know, 6 points in Nevada, and yet the Republican candidate, Sam Brown, would be down 4 points. And that's a 10-point discrepancy. In reality, Trump won Nevada by about 3, and Sam Brown lost Nevada by about a point or 2. So still, still discrepancy, but not nearly as much as the polling suggested it could have been. And the reason why there was split ticket voting was, frankly, Hispanics. As particularly, obviously, Nevada and Arizona. Trump appeals or has appealed to Hispanic voters, particularly Hispanic men, in a way your average Republican doesn't. Hispanic men trust Trump in ways they don't trust the average Republican because they still look at Republicans as stiffs, as people who only care about the wealthy. Whatever you think of Trump, whether you think he really is a populist or not, he conveys himself as a populist in ways other Republicans don't. And populism is very appealing to the Hispanic community, particularly, no pun intended, right-wing populism. I mean, Hispanics are sort of culturally conservative and they're economically populist. So a candidate like Trump is sort of the perfect match if you want to increase the Hispanic vote for Republicans. But when you have the other Senate Republican candidates like Sam Brown, like Carrie Lake, who, tried to tie themselves to Trump, but fundamentally are more traditional conservatives, it makes sense that Trump would do better with those voters. Same in the Rust Belt. Those 3 Rust Belt states, remember, Trump's the first Republican to win those states at the presidential level since the 1980s. So the fact that Trump would do better in those 3 states than Republican Senate candidates is not that surprising. I mean, in Michigan, it's been decades since a Republican has won a Senate seat in Michigan. Michigan's a very hard state to win as a Republican. Trump himself barely won Michigan in 2016. He won it by 10,000 votes. I think the margin was 0.2%. In this past election, he did better, but he only won it by 80,000 votes, about 1.4%. And Mike Rogers, the Republican Senate candidate, he lost Michigan by like 0.4%, 0.5%. I think it was like 20,000 votes. Given Trump's populist appeal in those, states, the Rust Belt, that tend to, be very open to populism, again, it makes sense that Trump would outrun traditional Republican candidates in those states. So the best explanation isn't that the presidential election was rigged. The best explanation is that Trump was just a very good candidate. I know the left doesn't like to hear this, but the most likely explanation is that Trump was a very strong candidate in these battleground states. He has a unique appeal to a lot of these important demographics in the Rust Belt and in the Sun Belt, which is why Trump was able to outperform these Republican Senate candidates. And it's so funny, and again, it's so funny to hear the left talk about the machines potentially being rigged, when after 2020, a lot of these same left-wing commentators like Mueller, she wrote, a very popular left-wing influencer. She There's tweets of hers saying that these voting machines can't be rigged. They're not connected to the internet. There's no way, you know, Dominion could have rigged the votes against Trump in 2020. Yet now these same left-wing commentators are pushing conspiracy theories that the voting machines were rigged in 2024. The reality is, in 2020, the reason why there's some reason to be suspicious is because we had all those mail-in ballots. That's what made the 2020 election the least secure election we've had in decades. And the reason why mail-in ballots makes presidential elections or any election less secure is because there's a lack of chain of custody. When there's a lack of chain of custody, it's easier to stuff the ballot box. I mean, that's the reality. And in 2020, you had all these states who arguably unconstitutionally changed election laws to implement massive mail-in balloting. That was the real problem with 2020. It wasn't the voting machines. I mean, I know Rudy Giuliani and some of Sidney Powell and some of Trump's lawyers pushed some of those voter machine theories, but they were never true. I mean, that's why Trump got rid of Sidney Powell and put Rudy to the sideline at a certain point during the election contest, because they were just saying things that weren't true about the machines. So the left was right to debunk some of those claims, but now, again, some prominent left-wingers, again, go on Blue Sky, you'll see it, are pushing the theory that the voting machines rigged the 2024 election. They're just hypocrites. I mean, the whole point of this podcast is to point out the hypocrisy of the left when it comes to election denialism. Democrats love denying presidential elections when Republicans win. There was Democrats in Congress voted to not certify George W. Bush's 2004 election victory because of theories that the machines were rigged in 2004 in Ohio. 2000, famously, many Democrats didn't accept the result, even though Bush, it was very close, but Bush probably won Florida. They did, there's a reason why Al Gore only wanted to do recounts in the blue counties in Florida. I mean, if that's not telling, I don't know what is. And, Democrats for 8 years basically called George W. Bush an illegitimate president. In 2016, Democrats voted to not certify Trump's election because of, the whole Russia nonsense. Democrats love, denying election results when it comes to Republicans. Now, I'll concede they didn't do it to the extent Trump did it. I mean, Trump's the type of person, if he thinks he got fucked over, he's not going to, take it laying down. Trump's going to fight. But just because Democrats are bigger pussies doesn't mean they haven't denied elections. And I'm starting to see more and more of this 2024 election nihilism on the left. Again, you're not seeing it so much on MSNBC and CNN, but the fact that the Economic Times is doing articles about a lawsuit, and that the fact that a Democrat judge has allowed this lawsuit to move forward, I think we're going to see more and more a push to claim the 2024 election was stolen. So, anyway, just something to keep an eye on. So, anyway, that's today's podcast. Please subscribe. You can subscribe on YouTube or any of the other podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to the website. Got some good content coming on the pipeline on the website. Thank you for the patience. You guys have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.